To Happiness in the City. This is Barbara, and I'm just so happy that you are watching this. Thank you so much. You're most welcome. And today I will continue my reflections on Psalm 69. Usually I went through Psalms readings very quickly, but this Psalm is so powerful for my personal experience because it deals with authority trauma. And I had that problem to deal with. I had authority, and then I was in a car accident, and I had to rely on other people to help me out. And then when I came back to understanding and healing that broken authority, I realized that it cannot be done without God. And I realized also that I was very ignorant about the nature of authority in the context of the Lord's having control over it. So, just like many of you, I went through traditional education, which we were not talking about such things at all. We were not learning them. They were left to the realm of church. And yet, when I started reading this psalm, I started understanding there is hope for me. That there is a way for God to heal political authority. And the psalm, of course, is very complex. It's one of the long psalms, and it is a psalm about salvation. When King David, who is a political leader, is in a very dangerous situation, and he's asking God for salvation. He's not looking for it from any other source. But of course, King David, born in the house of Israel, he knew about God from his childhood. So for him, it was a very natural way to know that that should be his political focus as king that was anointed by God himself, and as king whom God calls his son, which is another big discovery for me, to learn that God called King David his son. And I thought that that this is one of the most powerful directions to focus on learning how to ask God to heal political brokenness and political trauma. And in my case, it was also physical trauma. So I started reading this psalm with just a very vague expectation of what it will show me, and how God will lead me in understanding the way in which we can ask Him to heal political traumas. And it's a very big thing, because today the world is so broken, so fractured. We live in a fractured world, and there seems to be disconnection at a level that is beyond repair. So the world, the political world, also needs salvation. And this psalm teaches that the salvation will not happen without individual leaders being saved and rescued by God Himself. So this is one of those psalms that teaches us importance of a person, importance of an individual in political process, We think that when we focus on political communities, that it will solve the problems. But in this particular case, the healing begins with the leader first, and then we'll learn also about how God heals members of his kingdom, how God heals people that he rules. So the importance of the relationship between the leader of a political realm and God is very powerful here. And it's something that is just the most beautiful, magnificent thing that my mind can think about these days. Because the way a lot of us were brought up was thinking about state and church, and then they are separated, and state has nothing to do with God. But this is about a political leader within a state who has direct relationship with God. So this is very important for us to understand, because it means that there is a high level dimension of politics than we have been taught. Because if God speaks directly to a political leader and political leader to God, it means that God is present within the state. It's big. God is present within the state. And that there's a different dimension of the state and God's presence in the state and God's presence in church, which is something that I'm still learning. I'm just praying to God that he will show me how to think about those two realities. And I think that this is very healing for us and very hopeful for us, because if we know that in the political ideas, in the political realm, and all the decision making, all the thinking that we have about politics, that there is this way in which we can be rescued by God himself. So it's a way of God showing salvation in the political realm. And this is very new way of thinking for me. But it's wonderful, it's beautiful, and it's healing. When we look at how we learn modern history, it is very focused on events. And we don't really understand the secret world of those political leaders and their connection to God. We don't know that. Maybe they had it, maybe they didn't. And I think that when we are looking at the world today that is in a very difficult situation, we can learn a lot from Psalm 69 about directing our attention to learning how to connect with God and how to receive guidance from him. And obviously, this is directed to all leaders. There is no limit here, because any leader can turn to God and ask him to show him the way of salvation in the political context. They don't have to leave the state in order to be in a church or in a synagogue to connect with God, but they can do it directly with God. And then God shows them, obviously, how to worship Him in church or in a synagogue. But this particular psalm teaches that God Himself is political leader. He's the one who created politics. He's the one who knows how to teach it and how to guide in His virtual political leadership. So this is big for me. This is something that I wish I had understood when I was an active journalist, but better late than never, as they say. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to learn it. And I have in my whole being a tremendous joy that this is happening. One of the things that a political leader who turns to God learns is, as King David writes in the Psalm, "Because for thy sake I have borne reproach. Shame has covered my face." Because the reproaches of them that reproach thee are fallen upon me. So one of the first things that a political leader learns by turning to God is that there are people out there who don't like God, and they would turn against that politician because he is seeking God. So that's one of the things that may happen. But this is not anything to worry too much about, because God can take the politician out of that situation. And this is something that in political realm is of great significance, because if a political leader turns towards God in order to bring healing and virtue to his state, to his country, to his people, to the temples that worship God, he will be attacked by those who hate God, not him. He will not be attacked because of what he is, but because of God. And that is something that is very important for us to understand, because we have a lot of conflict in the world around matters of perceiving politics, where it should come from, who should be the leader, how it should be done. And when political leadership turns towards God for his light and his authority to come and rule the lives of members of a particular political realm, then the attack may happen not because the people who attack hate that particular country, but because they hate God. So any response to such hatred should understand this, because it's not really hate speech against that political leader looking for God, but it's hate speech against God himself. And that is something that is very important for us to grasp, because how to deal with this? The response of King David is that he continues praying to God and let God deal with this. So he continues believing that, O God, in the multitude of thy mercy, hear me in the truth of thy salvation. Deliver me out of the mire, and let me not sink. Let me be delivered from them that hate me, and out of the deep waters. So by continuing to focus on God, King David doesn't focus on those who hate God, but he's focusing on God to deliver him from those who are enemies of God. And that is a level of political communication that is very important for us to understand, because if we are dealing with hatred, but we are not understanding why, we are just turning to God, then we have no defense from those haters, because they don't really hate us, they hate God. So only God can deliver us from them. So the focus shouldn't be on the haters. The focus should be on God, because He is the one whom they hate. Big transformation of my understanding of the entire notion of the so-called hate speech. And we have a lot of that going on in many countries, especially those countries that have huge tradition of heritage of God's presence, like Israel, England, Poland, Russia, America, almost all European countries. And there is this strange situations in which hate is directed against God of those countries, but people from those countries, instead of turning to God for defense, they deal with the haters. And they will not win, because the hate is against God, not against those who worship God. So if you really understand that circle of participation, there's God, there's political leadership who asks God for salvation, and then there are those who hate God. And they couldn't care less about those who worship God. They just want to express their hatred towards God. So if we don't get the defense from God against those haters, we'll never win. Interesting. For me, it releases a lot of stress from my heart. Then also there are all the matters of the soul that political leader who turns towards God understands and deals with. And King David asks God, let not the water flood overflow me, neither let the deep swallow me up, and let not the pit shut her mouth upon me. So here are the dangers to the political leader that don't come from people or haters, from certain people, from certain communities of people. I'm using the word people in general, but there are many people who love God, so they would not do it to the political leader. But here we are learning about the dangers of the soul of a political leader. And those dangers, they don't come from human action. They come from things that are dangerous to the soul. And of course, I'm a beginner in those matters, so I'm just learning that the security and safety of the soul is of a different level than civil society. And this is big revelation for me, because it opens up understanding in my mind to the level of security and safety that can only come from God, because it is security and safety of the soul of a political leader. So it has nothing to do with any traditional threats for political matters that we are taught to pay attention to. Why is it important for us? Because when God delivers the soul from all of those dangers, that's where happiness comes in. That's where fortune comes in, joy, beautiful things, because the soul doesn't have to tremble and be sinking or be flooded. So we may return in modern politics back to the learning about the importance of a soul, of an individual political leader. I know that there are concepts of the soul of a nation or a country, but I'm not there yet. So I'm not going to comment on this because I don't really understand those matters too much. But let's begin with the basics, with an individual political leader who deals with social situations, like haters who hate God, and then he suffers because of that. And then all the matters of danger that are within his soul that can only be solved by God. And what are the sources of those dangers for the soul? We don't really understand it. Those are some of the mysteries that only God can reveal to us. But there's one thing that this turning of politics towards God can bring, is that the leader will end up with a broken heart because of the reproaches. So the leader becomes very vulnerable to attack from those who hate God, and then the political leader suffers because of that. And so he says, reproach has broken my heart, and I'm full of heaviness. And I looked for some to take pity, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none. They gave me also gall for my meat, and in my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. And that is a passage that is from ancient Israel, but is so similar to what then member of ancient Israel, Jesus Christ, revealed in his life. And he's called King of the Jews, King Jesus. And the psalm continues with all the punishments that the king asked God to put on those who created his brokenness. And this is a very long list of things. So we have a situation in which the hatred against political leader who turns to God is a source of the leader asking God for punishments of those who do it to him. Not because he wants to ignore them, but because he feels a sense of justice and righteousness in his heart, and thinks that only God's actions can heal him from this. So we see here a situation in which it's not trivial to follow God in the political realm. There are consequences. And I think that we may start studying those things, because I think that it will lift us all into a much higher level of understanding the consequences of breaking the law. In this particular case, the law that is broken, that is manifesting in King David's broken heart, is the hatred of those who hate God. So it's the first commandment, thou shalt not have other gods ahead of me. So they are breaking the divine law that was revealed, and that we have to pay attention to, because there are consequences to it. In current times we pay attention only to civil laws, but maybe we should start learning about other way of perceiving the importance of divine law. Thank you so much.